All right, this is part 2. On Tuesday, we talked about story-driven marketing strategies, ways to tell your story, ways to get people wrapped up in sort of who you are, what you're about, without you really being able to talk to them yet. We talked about sort of what your role is and how you can attract people into your sales funnel. And this is the follow-up to that, which is where they're now actually interested enough to interact with you. You're dealing with a person, and it's a much smaller audience. So let's kick off story-driven strategies for closing sales. With you as always, I am your friend, Scott McTaggart. So among other things, I am the sales director over at Eagle Dream for everything that happens in that middle Atlantic section of the United States. That would be, in our definition, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia, DC, all kinds of stuff. And I've seen a lot of different kinds of sales. I've seen a lot of this. I've managed sales teams. I've coached salespeople. I do a lot of pitch coaching still. I co-founded Kernels, which is a very interesting consulting firm with my good friend and co-conspirator, Olga Pagoda, who continues to run that business to this day. I'm the host of Pitchworks, which is on almost infinite hiatus until I get to the point where I can get back into my studio, thanks to coronaviruses and social distancing and any number of other different reasons. But I really don't want to do a podcast from my house. I prefer good audio quality for those things. And unfortunately, it's just not one of those things I can deliver to my expectation from here in my living room. If anyone would like to connect with me directly, that's my LinkedIn. It's pretty easy to do. It's my last name. So linkedin.com/in/MacTaggart, just like you see it there on the screen. I invite you to connect with me if we haven't already. Here's what we're going to do today. We're going to go through the deck. If you weren't with us on Tuesday, just a quick sort of orientation. There's a chat box here. I assume a lot of you are familiar with Zoom, but probably not everyone. There is a chat box. You are welcome to send questions during the program. I'm not going to necessarily stop every time a question comes in. We'll take sort of question breaks, or I'll try to address questions at a time when maybe they make logical sense in context. But whatever you've got, please feel free to send them over. We're going to cover things that are sort of the next chapter after the story we wrote the other day, and what the story is, what's your role, and basically what brings us all together here, which is how has this sales thing changed in the time of COVID, coronavirus, again, non-essential businesses being closed, having to find another way to make money. So let's jump in. This is what we're covering. We are telling our story, but now this is the difference between our marketing effort and our sales effort. It's a much smaller audience. You knew that already. We're going to choose and use tools to do this, especially given that, again, the reason that this is timely material is the fact that we're all adjusting to a constantly shifting set of rules for interacting with customers. 6-8 weeks ago, we were talking about how we needed to just be able to identify whether or not we were open or closed. And then that changed. And it will continue to change, and phased reopenings will happen. We're going to go through some tools that are going to basically make it so that no matter what level of distance you are, what phase your county is in, what phase your state even might be in, there will be a couple different ways for you to communicate with that audience. And I really want to keep an eye throughout all of this. We're going to get into the deep details, but we have to make sure we keep customer experience first and foremost, top of mind. So first up, if you weren't here on Tuesday, one of my favorite parts of the presentation in the marketing spot was you need to know what your role is in this whole process. A lot of times we think about this as our story, but it's not. Our job is to serve the customer, and if we're watching Harry Potter, you, the vendor, you, the salesperson, you are not Harry. You're not the chosen one. You get to be the person who helps that person get where they're trying to go. You coach, advise, supply. You do the things that that person needs so that they can get where they're trying to go. So take your pick. You could be, either one of these two. I'm more of a Hermione. I believe in the book smarts, but that's another story for another day. Same thing here. You know who you are. Make sure that you don't mistake yourself for being the star of the show. This is about the customer, and if you want to succeed at this, your story has to put them in the hero's chair. So let's go through the steps of the sale. This is very important. COVID or no COVID, this is the process that we as humans are familiar and comfortable with. This is what we're really looking for from someone who we are going to evaluate as a potential vendor. This is sort of like our psychology leads us down a certain path, and maybe it's because it's the way we're wired, or maybe it's just the fact that a lot of people before today did it this way. Whatever the answer is, this is how we're used to it. This is what we expect to happen. And if you do these out of order, bad things happen. Specifically, you don't get sales. Those are the bad things in today's context. So steps of the sale, we start with the intro. You cannot really have a conversation with someone if they don't know who you are. So hello, I'm blank, I'm with blank, how can I help? That's a pretty typical intro. Hi, I'm Scott, I'm with Eagle Dream, how can I help you? Qualification, how did you hear about us? What was it that interested you? Any number of different questions. This is where we start to find out if we're a good fit for them, if they're a good fit for us. What's your budget? How will you know that you found the right thing? Time's important. Basically, work through your question words. You're taking your story that you told during your marketing and advertising effort and really tailoring, customizing, bringing it to the real, bringing it to the street level. It wouldn't be proper, though, if you thought of qualification as just from you to them. Qualification goes two ways. They qualify you as well. They're going to want an ideal situation for themselves, and they're going to ask questions that help them determine whether or not they've found the ideal. Then there's a confirmation step. Confirmation is fantastic. And in the time of COVID, I don't always explain the steps of the sale with this one included, but when you're talking about the remote life we're living right now, I think a confirmation step is almost, it's critical. Typically, I identify 5 steps of the sale, 5.5, when I'm trying to make a joke out of it, and I say, okay, well, the half step is the confirmation, where I actually now review that qualification step and just double check to make sure I heard you right. This is especially necessary when you have something complex that you're trying to sell, or you and the customer don't necessarily have the same vocabulary. You don't use the same terms for the same things. So a good way to think of the confirmation step is, this is what I think you told me. This is what I think this is what I think I heard. After that, you've confirmed, you're going to throw up a proposal. You're going to say, here's a product at a price that I think would work. And again, that can come from either side of the table. Typically, it's going to come from the vendors because they are more familiar with their offerings. So here's a product at a price. If I am the inimitable Buzzy Torek over at Epicast Studios, and I'm going to do some audio work for you, you are not going to think that it is possible for you as the customer to sort of dream up a product package. That's complex work, audio engineering in a studio. You're going to say, I don't know, this is everything I need, and then you're going to shut up and you're going to wait for Buzzy to tell you, like, okay, for this much money per month, I will edit your podcast. For this much money per month, I will, engineer your live show, whatever. Then you go to the negotiation bit where just because a proposal was made doesn't mean that that's just like a final offer or a done deal or it's not necessarily perfect for both sides. So again, from either side of the table, it can be, hey, look, I can't do the price or the time or the color that you want me to do, but I can do these other things. But whatever it is, a lot of people, when I say negotiation, immediately read price into that conversation. but it's literally just anything that's valuable, anything that's useful to you. If you jump to price automatically when the concept of negotiation enters, I think you're leaving some pretty big dollars on the table. And then obviously you got to close, right? So, hey, look, you know what? It sounds like we agree. If that's everything, I think we're done. Let's make some paperwork happen. After that, you get into customer support, and I've learned now that that's not really something that is one of my steps, but I have to make sure I point that out to everyone. The most profitable part of your business will be support. You need to be thinking about what happens in year 2, year 3, year 4 with this customer. It's very important. So even though it's not one of our steps of the sale, I do include it just to keep you thinking about the fact that that's where the profits really are. So what the hell did I just tell you? I told you that the steps are actually a map. That's really what I was trying to tell you. Because where you are now tells you where to go next. Much like myself, there are a lot of people out there that they like the detail. They like making sure that a lot of information is being communicated. That can be hard when you're the vendor and you're sitting quietly. You may be a little bit overwhelmed by just the sheer volume of detail. And remember, you don't necessarily speak the same language. You don't normally use the same terminology. So it's easy to get lost. It's easy to have somebody maybe drone on for 20 minutes about their requirements, and then you forget what day of the week it is. So having a mental map that you walk through and you say, okay, it sounds like we're still qualifying. It sounds like we're still making sure that I'm a good fit for him and he's a good fit for me, and let's make sure that, this is all checked out. And then as soon as I believe that this long-winded, drawn-out story is over with, I'm going to ask whether or not I understand the requirements so that I can move confirmation, proposal, negotiation clause, right? You're going to see a lot of different sales models out there. You're going to see a 7-step, a 9-step, an 11-step, a 13-step. For a while there, it was a cottage industry for people to sort of create their own mental models so that they had something brandable. I don't care which one you fall in love with. The 5.5-step one that I am constantly talking about is, near as I can tell, the most boiled down one I've ever seen. So from there, we have to talk about the COVID thing again, because that's, again, like what kind of brings us to an urgency, a sense that we needed to do this session today. So I believe that COVID primarily changes the first 2 steps. The first bit is the introduction, right? The second is the qualification. And those 2 things are very different when you are not permitted to occupy physical space together, when people are in a weird place in terms of knowing their own priority, because change is hard on people and they don't necessarily understand what tomorrow or the week after today or the month after today will bring them. So making a good intro and doing qualification is murkier when the buyer doesn't necessarily know all the answers. They don't really 100% always know what to tell you. And I like to say that when things are confusing, be straightforward, be simple. Keep things as simple as possible. So I recently ran a survey. We talked about it on the last session. More than happy to share those results with you. If you weren't here and you would like me to share, go ahead and shoot me your information through my LinkedIn that I mentioned earlier. Ran this survey to determine how open the business-to-business community, professional buyers, were to getting outreach from sales and marketing people. We found out buyers were a lot more receptive than we thought, but there's a big caveat, gotcha, in there that says, don't waste my time. I don't think that's a giant surprise. I don't think anyone thinks anything of that. That's pretty obvious. In context, many buyers would love to hear how you can help, get to the point, be timely, be useful, right? But the one thing, while they're very open to hearing from you, just It's got to be real. It's got to be now. It's got to be useful. So here's how our intro changes. The regular intro, and I think we've all received something like this. Hi, can you please direct me to the person who handles your IT system? This has been crawling the earth since man learned to speak to man. Can you please send me to the person who makes long distance decisions for your household? Can you please, point me in the direction of the person who buys the insurance, whatever. It's a typical sort of, yes, I'm a sales rep. Yes, I realize that this may not be your top priority. I realize you're, in a busy day right now, and I'm interrupting at a time when I don't know is perfect for you. The COVID intro is the don't waste my time intro. It's the bottom line up front intro. I like this one a lot. I help businesses with work from home tech, and I've been offering a 12-month payment plan to help you pay for it. Does that sound like it would help you? Bang, direct, done. I can help. Here's how. This is what I did to make it easy because I know that you're likely probably concerned about certain things. 1, 2, 3, very easy, very easy. Here's another example of the same thing. Hi, I'm wondering if you'd like to save money on your electric bill, being the typical intro. That's actually one I've seen a lot of times in person. You walk through a shopping center or whatever, you'll find a lot of these people that have like a trade show table. They have alternative energy supplier and they want to get you signed up at your house or your business. The COVID version of that, the punch you in the face, sort of get it done version is, I can save you 10 to 15% on your electric bill, and I promise it'll only take 10 minutes to present my info and do the paperwork. So I'm telling you up front, hey, look, 10 to 15%, maybe you don't think that's a huge savings, maybe it doesn't sound like it, but what if I also compare it to how much time it's going to take? What if I tell you that, like this relatively small savings, I'm assuming, can be accomplished with minimal effort on your part? Does that change the equation for you? I bring this one up and I like this example because a lot of us can't necessarily change jobs or products right now. And sometimes we feel like, nobody wants to talk about electric supply right now. Nobody wants to talk about the thing I sell right now. And I get where you're coming from on that. And I think doubt has creeped into a lot of people's, outreach efforts. But that doesn't mean that you don't get to come to the party. It just means you need to think about how can you make yourself more relevant, or at least how can you minimize the potential for objection. Minimize the potential that someone is going to tell you that this is a waste of their time or they have other priorities or whatnot. Let's not lie to each other. 10 minutes is not that much out of this person's day. If you can save them $50, $100, they'd probably say yes. They just need to know that it's not a never-ending request for their time. So on to step 2, the other thing that I truly believe is affected right now, the qualification step. This pretty much stays the same, but the questions change. Like the process stays the same. The questions, you've got to think more in terms of just your own specific business. So again, qualifications when you and the customer are asking each other if you're a good fit, and they both have a good fit. Like both sides have a mental picture of what a perfect fit looks like. So the mechanism by which we find that will stay. I ask you questions. I look at your website. I try to find things out. You ask me questions. You try to find out what you can find out. But definitely the types of questions will change. So it's, are you still open? So for example, groceries right now have been very interesting because you may like, let's say, Giant Eagle, you like shopping there, but they're not stocking as much as they typically stock. So now we would introduce a new question to Giant Eagle as a potential vendor and say, well, how stocked are your shelves, or how much of my favorite products are you keeping? Qualification is about matching. And all of these things, I'm not going to read every single one of these to you. All of these things are about that matching, right? So sticking with our grocery store matching, maybe I want to be matched with a grocery store that delivers, right? Maybe that's a part of the product, right? So I need a grocery store that delivers now because I'm very let's say I'm immunocompromised and I don't want to be out in the grocery store. So now my needs have changed, and I'm going to ask different questions than I asked yesterday. This is especially relevant because now one of the things I want you to think about is which of your customers are you taking for granted? Which of your customers might actually need to be reclosed? And this is an interesting question as you start getting into assumed relationships. But every question that you ask is designed to get closer to determining whether or not you're a good fit and whether or not they're a good fit for you. So we've got those steps, and I'm just going to remind everybody one last time before we move into the next segment. We're going to intro, qualify, confirm our qualification, propose, negotiate, and close. And then we're going to push it off to a customer support function, account management function, where we make our real money. There are lots of books out there that you can read on these things. And I think a lot of you are smart enough to have adapted, or how about this? If you made time, you could probably come up with alterations that you could make to a stepwise process. So I don't think that's the whole show today. I don't think that's the whole message. We have to also talk about how things change because we're remote and what tools we're using and how does that affect this whole conversation. So yes, I got cute and punny, and I titled this one About Face because it used to be that you tried not to do video calls, right? Especially with strangers and especially at work. Conference calls were kind of the coin of the realm. They've been around for decades. Dial 1-800 free conference call, punch in your code, end up on a conference bridge, mute yourself, keep on doing emails and whatnot in the background. Nobody can tell that you're working on something else. And now all of a sudden, video calls are accepted. Something changed. We're not just avoiding them, we're tolerating them. And you don't have to believe me. Look at the data. Every platform is up by a lot. The easy one, the Facebook Messenger, that's a personal to personal for the most part, 70% in March. No, not terribly surprising. That's group video calls. Teams, Microsoft Teams, it's free for a lot of these Microsoft customers, but they were never using it. Like it's not an additional cost that they were running into. 10 times as many Teams video calls because of the pandemic and the lockdown. Now everyone knows what Zoom is. Like people in your neighborhood that you never thought were going to know what Zoom conferencing was, not only do they know it, but there's actually a really good chance that they're invested in it. Because as you see down here at the bottom, their stock has more than doubled in that time. And well, let it suffice it to say that a lot of other stocks didn't do so well. So we're now talking to our customers through technology tools face-to-face. We're more disconnected is part of it. There is a sort of human-to-human interaction there. That's a guess. That's my own interpretation of it. But I also believe that a big part of our face-to-face video networking thing is that we collect evaluation data visually. Does this person seem like they have a grasp of the content? Does this person seem like they are having a hard time telling the truth? They seem uncomfortable. That's data that we typically collect from body language and other visual cues. And I am amazed at how many calls that I've been on in the last 30 days that were 100% cameras on, even though there was no requirement for it. And I do think that it's because that qualification step is somewhat enhanced, if not completely changed, by visual data being available. So you know these tools. Let's talk about sort of very quickly, what your options are and how they might change the decisions that you make. You're on Zoom right now, so let's assume that you know what that is. But the fact that it's easy to use is important. The fact that a lot of people already have the necessary software deployed on their preferred machine. That's a big part of this conversation. It's harder now to ask somebody to put a new piece of software on their computer because Zoom has sort of cornered the PR market. They've become the Kleenex of video conferencing. So you know generally that you have a pretty good shot of landing with somebody when you say, hey, I'll send you a Zoom. They won't ask you what that is. There's a freemium model here, so if you're just going to do sort of one-to-one, you can have 3 people on Zoom for free for up to 40 minutes on a call. And even if you decide to upgrade, it's not expensive. It's like $15 a month, and you can handle up to, I believe, 100 subscribers. 100, sorry, not subscribers, 100 people in a conference. Google Hangouts, easy to use, no installation required. You can do that right in your browser, which has its advantage. Also includes screen sharing, just like Zoom. You have to have a Google account. I realize that like some people use Yahoo or Hotmail or whatever else for their email, and you know that may add one extra layer, but by and large, Google Hangout seems to be the number 2 in terms of the requests that I get and the meetings that I see. FaceTime, honestly, if you can pull this off, I'm a huge fan of just the extra touch that FaceTime seems to indicate. And I think that's emotion by association kind of thinking now, where they FaceTime with grandma, they FaceTime with their nieces and nephews, they FaceTime with you. It's a good association. They Zoom with other people, they FaceTime with people that are closer to them. There's no screen sharing though. So if you need that presents a real problem. Obviously, you know, they have to have Apple hardware, you know, and that is a huge barrier, but it is free if you can jump all those hurdles. And freeconferencecall.com, I throw this out there because a lot of you already have freeconferencecall.com accounts. You still have to put in a client. I actually believe, I'll bet you if you look under the hood, it's Zoom, but it doesn't look like Zoom. It's got a different skin on it. But very few people have this thing installed. It will do the screen sharing. It's still a freemium sort of a model where if you have the free level of free conference call, they'll still let you do it. You can even do the recording. Again, you can buy up. It's not a lot to buy up. I forget what the rates are on free conference call if you want a premium subscription. But these are some of your choices. I've seen some other ones. This is not intended to be an exhaustive list. I was tempted to put Join Me on this list and Blue Jeans on this list, but in the last 6 months, I've only done 1 call on either of those platforms. So if that's your tool of choice, and I somehow offended you by not including it on the deck, the check's in the mail. So I want to talk about sharing ideas now, right? Screen sharing's great. But let's back up. Let's zoom out for 1 second, right? We got way into the weeds for a moment. We got super deep into seeing your face and talking to you. But let's think about the mission again for a moment. What are we trying to do? Trying to advance through those steps, right? We're trying to tell a story about how we can solve this person's problem. We're using a stepwise process to do it. It only makes sense that some things are going to be collaborative, and some things I'm going to need information from you. You're going to have to share it with me. You're going to have a specific situation you need me to understand. And that, again, that's a bidirectional thing that can come from either side of the table. And one of the worst things about this pandemic is the fact that we can't do that same collaboration we're used to. I'm a whiteboard weirdo. I love getting into the room with people, and when we're working together. And remember, like my job, I'm doing a lot of technical architecture conversations. How does the data move through a business, for example? How does your website send something to other features and functions that you've got activated? A lot of times it's easier to do with arrows and draw and erase and try again and those kinds of things. So I grabbed a couple free tools for you to make sure that you can collaborate with those folks. The confirmation step, the qualification step may actually depend on this. Miro, which I'm new to. Someone just recommended this to me a couple weeks ago, again, in light of everything that we're going through. It's a collaborative whiteboard. I work on it, you work on it at the same time. There are templates for some models. It does start out as free. You can buy up and save your own templates. There's some interesting things to be done there. One of the things that you do have to accept, though, is that you need a Miro sign up. That means that you're going to get Miro emails, and I recognize that. If that's a little bit of a drawback for you, Google Drawings, which I swear is a flowchart tool, but I don't think it typically gets used that way. Google Drawings will allow you to collaborate in a similar way, where you get this clunkier interface, but again, you can use your existing Google account. It's still collaborative. Two people can look at and work on the same thing at the same time. And again, like I see this as a way to get your qualification and confirmation done. Again, let's go back to our steps just so we're all on the same page, because I don't have that slide up right now. We introduced, we asked questions back and forth to make sure that we were a good fit for each other. And then I ask you, as if I'm the vendor, I ask you, did I hear you correctly? If the answer to that is no, you didn't understand, you didn't hear me correctly, and the screen share isn't getting it done, these tools can help.